Imagine one night you decide to hop on a game of Team Fortress 2. Here's the thing, the server is completely devoid of players. That is, until somebody joins. You decide to look for them, and when you do, you get this chilling feeling. Eventually, you do find him, just standing there, unnervingly. The moment your mercenaries lock eyes, you begin to realize that isn't a player, nor is it a bot. It's a goddamn hellspawn. I realized something. Most of my horror consumption has mainly been through internet horror, creepypastas, various web series, and the like. So as Spirit Halloweens open up and All Hallows Eve approaches, I decided to catch up on all the horror media I've missed out on. These range from games to movies to even manga. The more I took in, I came to this conclusion. A lot is missing from internet horror. Now I know that's not a fair comparison to make because I'm comparing media with entire teams and million-dollar budgets to projects made by one guy in his room who also has $1 million budget just in Venezuela dollars. Plus, there's internet horror I consider to be masterpieces and grade A productions that are total blunders. But simply put, internet horror tends to lack things such as atmosphere, rely too heavily on things such as shock value, and compile so much lore that it takes away from the fear of the unknown. Half the time, they don't even follow a coherent story. So why do I bring this up? Because Team Fortress 2 fans are on another fucking level. Like seriously, whether or not you're a big fan of the game, you've probably seen a TF2 animation show up in your recommended, from silly Gmod productions to cinematic source filmmaker masterpieces. With TF2 horror projects, I think the views on them and the length of these video essays should already tell you enough. But why? Why make horror out of Team Fortress 2? Are these animations really that deserving of millions of views and multiple video essays? And most importantly, are they actually scary? Like, how is a game based on dying in the most comical ways supposed to make you afraid? Now let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Before I talk about some more obvious choices, I want to begin with the classic, and perhaps what started it all. On March 19th of 2017, a YouTuber named Spunky uploaded a video titled Gmod HoovyDundy Part 1. In the description, the creator talks about how they were a big fan of TF2 freaks. For those of you who are pretty unfamiliar with the term, TF2 freaks are essentially the community's version of SCPs. The lore can be expanded upon, and new freaks could be added to the list. They're bizarre creatures made out of the mercs and serve as central characters for various TF2 animations. These include the Intelligent Heavy, Painless Cupcake, and an engineer with a questionable looking mouth. I should call her. Back to the video. Spunky loved TF2 freaks, but felt like they lacked creepiness, and from that, the first part of HoovyDundy was born. The video begins with the red team losing multiple times, and the scout looking visibly irritated. When the sequence of L's finishes up, the red team decides to just slack off and watch some TV. The scout, still upset about the losses, breaks the TV to get their attention. His fellow team members respond in annoyance, which causes the scout to wander off to the blue side. Once he's face to face with the blue sniper, the two hurl insults at each other. It gets to a point where the sniper gets really offended and the other mercs jump in. Red Scout surrenders and drops all of his weapons. While they all stand there menacingly, the blue spy just tells them to walk away. That does annoy the rest of the blue team, and as the Red Scout leaves, the blue heavy mocks him, to where the Red Scout responds with an insult. We cut back to the red team, where we see the message that details the blue heavy killed the Red Scout, though the red team is unfazed. When it cuts back to the blue team, Spy is freaked out, while the soldier just tells him to shrug it off as he'll just respawn. Sniper on the lookout sees a red heavy just standing outside of the scout's corpse. Upon closer inspection, the heavy's back is covered in knives. Sniper shoots at the heavy only for it to disappear. Sniper runs back to the base, and when he tries to tell them what happened, he gets mocked for it. Demo Man sees that the intelligence is emitting a red glow, so him and Pyro go investigate. Once they enter in, screams can be heard and catches the blue team's attention. They send Spy to investigate. The moment he arrives, he drops his gun, and we can see the shocked expression up close. Then we see the true horrors, the dismembered limbs of the two mercs hanging from the ceiling. The red heavy from earlier returns, grabbing onto the Spy's face before putting him in a chokehold. He does let go, however, probably because Spy was the one blue mercenary showing mercy to the late scout. Spy returns to tell everyone what happened. Now the blue mercs have found a new objective, to eliminate this red heavy. This first part was only a setup for the real horror, which leads us to part 2. After a quick bit with the red heavy dropping a sandwich, both the soldier and the engineer start investigating the respawn machine. As they notice, Scout hasn't returned yet. They laugh about Scout's Scout's death, but then they notice something peculiar, the heavy entity from the last video. We cut to the Blue engineer and Scout just guarding the sewers. In their conversation, the engineer brings up a story regarding a team that was killed and never respawned, with their heavy going missing, while Scout is shrugging the whole ordeal off as this heavy is just another heavy and that they could respawn. The engineer decides that he should face this heavy himself. Of course, this backfires as he ends up being killed by the red heavy. We get a scene of the Scout catching up to the heavy. Scout has no other choice but to retreat, to where he meets up with the spy. In this confrontation, Scout is still ignorant about the whole heavy situation, while Spy tries his best to warn him of how dangerous this heavy is. Fast forward past some sequences of the spy investigating, and the sniper and soldier having a conversation about the respawn machines, we see Spy come across Scout all disfigured. Scout tells us some vital information. The heavy can be killed if all the knives on it are removed. However, the more knives that are removed, the stronger he gets. And worst of all, there's no respawning with it alive. How Scout knows this? Because it told him so. The video ends with the Blue medic and heavy being ambushed, and then the remaining Blue team locking in. There is a trailer for part 3 that released 7 years ago. No need to fret, it's still coming. All I can really say from this trailer is that the two teams teamed up, but they do seem to have taken some losses. The choppy animations and the spliced voice clips are for sure hard to ignore, but we have to remember, this is a project from years ago made by one person, a project that's paying homage to projects from years prior by creators in similar circumstances. Plus, I think there's a level of charm to it. HoovyDundy acknowledges how comedic Team Fortress 2 and its fan projects are, and uses those wacky elements to its advantage. In the beginning, we're left to believe that this will just be another wacky TF2 horror animation, until the horrors play out. TF2 Gmod animations tend to exaggerate the facial features of the mercs for the sake of comedic effect, yet here it's done to really show the fear in the characters' faces. Transitioning over to the entity itself, it manages to stay hidden, and we learn more about what it's capable of through small increments. It leans heavily into that fear of the unknown. I know I already used that term earlier in the video, and I'm going to keep repeating that term for the rest of the video. That concept is so important when it comes to horror. There's an immense level of dread with a HoovyDundy entity. It handicaps the mercs by taking away their respawning. The mercs have one chance to defeat this entity, and one chance only. It's able to take out multiple armed mercs, and the only way you can stop it is to make it stronger. Killing it will be difficult, but at least it's not impossible. The fact that the heavy spared the spy and spoke to the scout proves that it has some level of intellect. What makes it even scarier is that the HoovyDundy entity is literally in their base. At any moment, any of the mercs could fall victim. Both the series' music choice and cinematography are absolutely genius, and reflect the effort to make the horror effective. It's one thing to see the mercs get shot or blown up, but it's another to see them dismembered and their limbs be used as decorations. Part 1 works perfectly as its own thing, as well as the perfect setup for something greater, while Part 2 builds upon the characters and stakes. Nonetheless, I think Part 3 will make all those years of waiting worth it. The YouTuber Intricate Labs has a video that not only includes his and other creators' commentary on the series, but it also includes an interview with Spunky himself. I highly recommend you guys check it out. Now, TF2 horror content has existed before HoovyDundy, but it's considered the one that kicked everything off. It did what very few TF2 horror animations did at the time: take itself seriously. This series showed the lengths TF2 horror content can go without straying too far away from what makes TF2, well, TF2. This in turn would inspire other creators to make their own TF2 horror animations, which means I can finally talk about 4 years after its trailer was uploaded, Emesis Blue would be released by the YouTube channel Fortress Films. The way I found out about this film is interesting because it wasn't the film itself that showed up in my YouTube recommended, it was Dead Meat's kill count video on it. Yes, that Dead Meat. Now, this part of the video won't be a proper analysis of the film, mainly because analysis videos on this film are longer than the film itself. And more importantly, like everything else in this video, it's better that you experience it for yourself. You should also watch these two prequels before you watch Emesis Blue. Yes, Emesis Blue is great on its own, but these two prequels are more important than you think. The first being Spy's Disguise, which includes both characters who make an appearance in Emesis Blue, and the smashing of the respawn machine, an event vital for the context of the film. It's especially worth watching because it revolves around a spy that turns into a badass cyborg. For the other, Emesis Diazepam is an in-universe advertisement promoting a drug that has a side effect of creating hallucinations. Does the word Emesis look familiar? Back to the film itself. This film follows the world of Team Fortress 2 years after the blue team was laid off. The film opens up with a Day of Defeat soldier stepping out of the respawn machine without his eyes. From the start, we already know what the central focus will be, and that is on the negative effects of the respawn machine. There are 4 main mercenaries we'll focus on. Up first is Medic, who seems to be dealing with some sort of inner demons. parents. We also have Scout, or Jeremy. He's been dumbed down to a childlike state and now has to live with his mother. It's not explicitly stated as to why he's like this, but we can immediately assume it's because of the respawn machine. Then we have the spy and soldier. The two are investigating the disappearance of Jules Archibald. To explain who Jules Archibald is, he's an original character to the story, but he's based on the citizen class from Team Fortress Classic. His role in the story is that he's the current governor of New Mexico. By the end of the movie, we learn that he's a lot more depraved. The duo had a run-in with Heavy, and after Soldier foolishly kills him, a masked figure appears to take the briefcase Heavy was carrying. Already we got some questions. Who is this masked figure, and why is this briefcase so important? Of course, we'll see the other mercenaries down the line. Within the first couple of minutes of the film, Scout gets kidnapped and his mother gets killed. The scene that tells you that something wrong is going on while a masked figure stands there is probably one of the creepiest scenes I've ever watched. For some reason, Medic is at Scout's house after the events happen, and then he just wakes up back at his office. When he's at his office, he receives a phone call that recorded his previous conversation. Both Spy and Soldier show up at Scout's mother's murder scene, where they find a bone saw. They immediately suspect Medic. Let's just say they aren't far off. These revelations lead to all three to arrive at the Conager slaughterhouse. To focus back onto Medic, he does find Scout, just not in the state he'd like to see him in. Scout was held by the Conager brothers, the brothers of Dell from Spy's Disguise. The brothers shoot Medic, only for him to come back as his evil alter ego and kill the brothers. Scout unfortunately dies, though this other Scout could potentially be him. This just proves that the damage done to these already faulty machines just made things much worse. It's in this slaughterhouse that more and more events start to unfold. Some of our favorite marks are the almost mythical masked figures we see throughout. Others are mindless zombies. The only exception is the Demo Man, though he doesn't last that long. In Demo Man's final moments, he's at a bar within a void, ran by none other than Dell. Things that only get more disturbing, they also become incomprehensible. One thing becomes clear: the mercenaries were nothing more than disposables, picked through a cruel process, and had to be killed hundreds of times to appease the higher-ups. Jules Archibald isn't just a shady businessman, he's an actual menace. He's the one responsible for recruiting the mercs and making use of the respawn machine so that he can save money by recruiting no more than 10 mercenaries, the 10th being that Day of Defeat soldier. His disappearance was fake so that he wouldn't have to be investigated. Seeing both the burning of the slaughterhouse and the death of Archibald has got to be one of the most satisfying things ever. In one of the most intense scenes of the film, a spy with his face all burnt up plays Russian roulette with Soldier and Medic. This is done for interrogation due to everything Spy learned, to which then Medic ends up losing, only for him to come back to life at Archibald's funeral and kill Spy. Both Man brothers also end up being killed, which leads us back to the Purgatory bar. It becomes very clear that Medic has died. Afterwards, Medic goes to the bathroom and decides to take his meds. When he notices something is off, he unwraps and discovers that the medicine he's been taking is actually Emesis diazepam, the medicine from the advert. The film ends with the Medic crashed into a pole and with one final respawn. Now with the added question of how much of the movie was actually real. Holy shit, I had to rewrite this part of the script because my original draft did this movie so dirty. To say that Emesis Blue is impressive would be a complete understatement. The animations were incredibly smooth, and the fact that everyone was voice acted is chef's kiss. If I were to describe Emesis Blue in one word, I'd call it a mindfuck. The first time I watched it, I had no fucking clue on what was going on, and based on these search results, I wasn't alone in that feeling. As the animations play out, more and more questions pop in. It doesn't help that we're bombarded with things like the recordings of previous conversations, time loops, flashbacks, surreal imagery, and the ending that reveals that most of the events in the film are probably hallucinations. The setting of the slaughterhouse is dark and eerie, making it the perfect place to house the horrors. But that isn't just any place, that's Two Fort, a map you've probably spent so many hours on. It's just a twisted version of what it used to be. To recite a point I made with HoovyDundy, there's a really big difference in seeing these mercs die in cartoony ways and seeing them in the state they're in now. The fact that the mercs have preserved fragments of their original personalities except for the lovable whimsical parts is a bit disheartening. They're abominations, monsters created as a result of greed. Gore of my comfort character? More like the psychological torment of my comfort character. One of these mercs is someone's comfort character, right? Before it's revealed, what happened to them is probably a question that popped up in your mind. The antagonists of the story aren't just in the zombies, the masked figures, or the greedy dirtbags. It's in the central characters themselves. We can see the medic and the soldier be at war with themselves. Quite literally, in fact. I want to talk about those mysterious figures again. I just loved seeing them on screen. They're like a mix of old school slashers and anime villains. Emesis Blue addresses a question that has popped up in other media. If someone comes back from the dead, are they really the same person? In works like Monkey Paw and Full Metal Alchemist, it's portrayed disturbingly. They both involve a rotting corpse awake from its slumber. In other works such as Pantheon and Ghost in the Shell, it's not as disturbing, but it just makes you think. We'll have resurrected humans who look and act the same as they were when they were alive, but they're essentially Theseus ships. And Emesis Blue is like a mix of the two. I think it's especially interesting for Team Fortress 2 because many headcanons related to respawning or clone characters are probably due to Emesis Blue. Not only are there tie-ins to Fortress Fortress films' other works, there are also references to a couple of popular films. They're not essential to your enjoyment of the film, but they add so much more charm when you understand what those references are. Based on this YouTube video, the creator is very clearly a fan of Stanley Kubrick. When it comes to TF2 SFM animations, especially of the horror variety, Emesis Blue is probably what comes up to everyone's minds, and that's coming from a post-Saxy Award society. This film really pushes the boundaries in how far a fan animation of the game can go when it comes to production quality, storytelling, and fear factor. At the same time, it blends itself so well within the world of Team Fortress 2, you forget the fact that it's fan-made. Now where can we go from here? Allow me to introduce a different approach to TF2 horror, unfictional horror, horror in the form of nostalgia. I want you to take a look at these empty TF2 maps. How do they make you feel? Seeing a place that used to be filled with players in action, now missing that. You hear nothing but UI sound effects, machinery, and ambience. To some of you, it means nothing, but to others, these vacant servers induce a feeling of eeriness. Might even say, it feels haunting. This can be defined as canopsia. Here is where the TF2 anomalies come in. On April 3rd of 2023, a YouTuber named KeekKillsReality uploaded a video titled T4_anomaly.mp4. This is a very strange video because Keek is known more for their source filmmaker animations, which are a lot more comedic and random when compared to the video we're about to dive into. We start off with a player loading into 2 Fort, and after he selects the scout, both teams are just in the red base dancing. When our player leaves for a few seconds, he goes back in. Unexpectedly, everyone has disappeared. Though there is a sniper dead body just lying there, the player decides to head towards the intelligence, and in the distance, there's a sniper just creeping behind the wall. At the intelligence, the sniper can be seen in the distance. Then out of nowhere, the sniper just rushes towards the screen. From what we can see, his eyes are glowing white and he's maintaining an A pose. Our scout player starts retreating, causing the sniper to chase after him. While the scout is running, the walls begin to emit a green glow and buzzing can be heard. As he gets out of the hallway, all the mercs from earlier are back, dancing as if nothing's happened. Here's what the video says in the description. Was playing some 2 Fort the other day and saw that. I don't know if this is a glitch or something from the recent big update, but it scared me. Today I decided to upload it here to see if anyone has encountered something similar. Let's continue over to doublecross_anomaly.mp4. That takes place on, you guessed it, Double Cross. Everything starts out as a normal TF2 game would. The occasional glitches in the video are authentic, yet add to the eeriness. At some point, the player decides to go through the sewers. He turns around and tries to leave the sewers, only to be jump scared by the sniper anomaly. Then he runs into a heavy anomaly. As he evades both, he comes across a glowing white door that just teleports him to 2 Fort. The map has nobody except for the sniper corpse. Just like with the last video, footsteps can be heard, leading the player to run to the intelligence. He hides in a corner, and then the video ends with the sniper anomaly closing in. Our third video to talk about, Dust Bowl Anomaly, is different than the last two. We get the normal setup of gameplay interrupted by the entity, but the entity is just out in the open, while the rest of the mercs just freeze. The glow we saw from the last video appears and radiates more than ever, followed up by the sniper player in the video being sent to 2 Fort. We see the scout from the last video running to the intelligence, meaning that this video takes place at the same time as the last. The sniper heads to the intelligence and we see the white door again. An angelic ambient sound can be heard as the sniper walks towards it, but he's interrupted by the heavy anomaly manhandling him, ending the video. The following videos follow similar formulas. The game plays out as normal, until the player is left by themselves. Then the videos end with a glow and a jump scare from the anomaly. Over time, we see different anomalies possessing different abilities. We've already seen the A-post sniper in the animated heavy, but there's also an engineer and a spy with elongated limbs. They kind of remind me of Japanese yokai. I know what you're thinking. This is literally the Team Fortress 2 version of Herobrine, and to that I say you're absolutely correct. These anomalies also share aspects with the ghosts of Lockout from Halo 2 and the shadowy figures in Gmod. Hey, you should totally check out the video where I talk about those. I'm totally not salty about it flopping. There's probably other video game boogeymen you could think of, but the point remains the same. These ghosts blossom into the uncanny. They look way too similar to the in-game characters and fit in way too well, throwing off what we believe to be real. These were all supported by the creepiness and empty servers. Anomalies, I feel, perfected this. Already, the videos feel like the time period they're replicating, with the realism in how the players act, as well as the actual vibe of the series. Considering we're talking about a game that's over 10 years old, it's only natural people feel nostalgic over it. When digital horror succeeds, it's supposed to send your mind back to that childlike state. You start to feel vulnerable, re-experiencing that childhood trauma all over again. Almost everything about the anomalies remains a mystery. We slowly start to learn more about their capabilities, but what they want is something we still don't know. They're not actively on the hunt. They lure players in, waiting for them to be open and alone. If you were to show me this series as a little kid, I'd say it's much more believable and even scarier than Herobrine and those other myths. There's footage of these anomalies, so we wouldn't be able to dismiss them as playground rumors. Source filmmaker wasn't publicly publicly available until 2012, a year after when the series is supposed to take place. They move in such a human-like way to where we couldn't disregard them as hackers, bots, or just a random glitch. Plus, there's the mystery element. The concept of Herobrine may be goofy looking at it now, but as a kid, he's terrifying. This is because of previously mentioned reasons like the uncanny, but also because Minecraft in its alpha stage had its creepy moments. A rumor that a ghost is messing with your need for survival does not help. In spite of that, with how poorly written the original creepypasta is, and the fact that Herobrine is portrayed as a cartoony villain in animations, his fear factor is completely removed. In short, Anomalies challenges issues prevalent in the Ghost in the Machine trope. With these later videos in the playlist, Anomalies starts to shift in style. Video number 7 is titled TF2 Anomalies Still Found Footage. The description says some weird things. He is alone. Alone. He does not know where everyone went. Something is following him. Instead of gameplay, we get found footage in the perspective of an engineer exploring steel. Throughout this video, he's being stalked by a spy anomaly. The spy does end up catching up to the NG, causing him to drop the camera. It's becoming clear that the anomalies are capable of not only traveling between servers, but within the in-game universe. This next video brings us back to the gameplay segments, except there's more than just gameplay. You get a perspective of an anomaly encounter, this time with Windows Movie Maker editing. Not only is this part nostalgic for a kid who made shit in Windows Movie Maker, it adds so much more realism to the anomalies. It also shows more about the anomalies' attributes, like having no names and being able to crash the game. We're back in the perspective of the engineer from earlier. Now in 2.4, he reaches the door the anomalies used to travel between maps and enters it himself. He explores through the void until he finds an entrance to another map. Our next couple of videos appear to be just like Keek's usual comedic content. However, the fact that they're in this playlist and the way each video ends reveals that the anomalies have made their way over. We get a storyline of a soldier who gets killed by anomalies, only to revive him. As he's about to get attacked again, he gets saved by the engineer from the previous videos. In the void, we see him wake up, and as he spots the engineer from a distance, he runs towards him. That's all we pretty much have left besides another Windows Movie Maker anomaly encounter, and a video of a guy in a Gru cosplay dancing to Terraria music. I want to point out the comments to these videos. Even though this is a serious spooky series, the comments still manage to crack a couple of jokes. My love for this series comes from the fact I'm nostalgic for the era it's supposed to take place in, and that despite their corniness, I'm in love with video game urban legends. My love for this series also stems from how real it feels. I think where internet horror fails is when it tries to portray itself as something that actually happened. Yes, all of those stories contain the supernatural, but the supernatural should only be a blur between fiction and unfiction. Unfortunately, that's where a lot of internet horror misses the mark, but it's also where Anomalies nails it. To add on, let's talk about the animations. It acknowledges the mercenaries as living beings, while also expanding the realm of what the anomalies are capable of. Now I know what some of you guys are thinking. If this entity is so scary, why don't you just turn off your PC? The next series I'm about to cover addresses that very question.
How many video essays does this series need? Coming up next is ServerBlight.
After 2 years of inactivity, the YouTube channel, Two Idiot Germans, would upload a video titled SFM Horror, The Empty Server. It starts off with a player loading into Thunder Mountain as a sniper. We can see that his username is Dixalot, and right off the bat, his name perfectly suits him. He gets a message from a red team player named Gillysuit. KYS it says. Dixalot looks for the other players. Eventually, he runs into a spy named Bredolphin, who just jumps off a cliff. A red scout named Direction Z also appears. Dixalot aims straight at his head, to where he just nods. Dixalot just ends up headshotting him. Gillysuit still repeats the phrase KYS to the annoyance of Dixalot. We see that there's a problem. Dixalot can't disconnect. Later, he not only approaches the payload, he also meets Gillysuit. We can see that he's an engineer, but one who's moving more human-like. Him saying KYS wasn't to be rude or disrespectful. He was trying to save Dixalot. He warns him that something is coming. Gillysuit runs away, and then Red Heavy starts creeping through. The Heavy grunts, "Help me." The Heavy's fingers crack, and now Dixalot finds himself running up the stairs. He sees Gillysuit's corpse, and written in his blood it reads out, "Don't let it take you alive." The creature gets closer, making Dixalot continue running. It becomes clear as to what the creature is, an amalgamation of different mercs. Luckily, Dixalot escapes by falling off a cliff, ending the video. Now we move on to migration. The video begins immediately after Dixalot leaves, this time focusing on a red engineer named Johnny Danny 12. He's alone with Gillysuit, which is strange because not only did we see him die in the last video, he's constantly spamming, "I'm having so much fun." Johnny Danny does end up fighting Gillysuit ghillie suit who's just dicking down the floor. We get a closer look into Johnny Danny's face. He's in shock. It doesn't help that the entity from before pops in and closes in on the two engineers. Johnny Danny just leaves the game as he's about to get grabbed. Realizing it's no longer confined to the server, the entity grunts a thank you, and we see many names leave the server. Our next entry gives both the series and the entity a proper name, the ServerBlight. We see Dixalot again, who's joined by his friend Matt. Though Dixalot's real name is name dropped as Aaron, so we'll refer to him as such. After respawning, Aaron switches to Soldier and absolutely destroys the blue team and payload. The next round begins. Matt gets irritated that this new round just gives them one other player. He begins questioning why they don't just go to casual. Out of nowhere, a bunch of familiar names join the server. The camera zooms in towards Aaron's Soldier's eyes. Fear starts to shake up in his character model. Aaron tries to warn Matt on the dangers of the Blight, to which Matt just brushes it off as just another script kid. The two proceed onward, and it's here where things start to feel off. Nonetheless, the game continues. Throughout this game, Matt just says lines that feel monotonous and repetitive, something Aaron doesn't realize or point out. The two end up finding their teammate, who is separated from them. It turns out, this Heavy is a part of the Blight, turns around and starts chasing the two before he ends up getting kicked. Aaron tries to get both of them to leave by jumping off the map. They come across more of the Blight and successfully evade it. Aaron tries to tell Matt about what's happening, though Matt seems confused. Then it becomes even clearer. Matt has been subjugated to the server Blight. Distraught as to what has become of his friend, Aaron is left with no choice but to leave without him. Within the next two videos, not only do we get a change in storytelling, but we also get a larger view of the Blight's abilities and thought process. Let's just say, the Blight comes off as a bit more cosmic. Puppet is a creepypasta narration from the point of view of a player trapped in the Blight. You see all that cramping and stretching between the different mercenaries merged within the Blight? Well, guess what? The real world players feel every ounce of that pain. The limits of their bodies are bent against their will. It doesn't help that they hear nothing but the cries of the other players. What the Blight's motives are, we don't know. But we do know one thing. It finds enjoyment in the constant torment of the players. Assimilation's title should already tell you enough about what's going to happen. Not only are we following a blue spy, we're also following the player behind them. We already know something is up, based on the fact the player keeps looking behind his shoulder and that the sniper looks oddly suspicious. In the middle of the video, the server abruptly becomes empty. Our spy turns invisible for a second, only to see the other players waiting for him. When we see him freaking out, a Heavy stands behind him. He starts running, and the blighted mercs only chase. It's become apparent that the Blight has learned how to fake a game to lure more victims. Our lead fails to leave the game, and as he's standing in the in-game hallway, he turns around and sees that very hallway. It appears his soul is within the game. It switches between the player and the spy as the Blight reaches towards him. The video ends with the player all passed out. Let's take a breather real quick. What we just watched is an entity within TF2 that many players succumb to through its different luring methods. Worst of all, it affects them in the real world, putting their bodies in a catatonic state while they feel relentless, excruciating pain. From what we've seen, this series combines elements from the last three entries: the eeriness of empty maps, the struggle in dealing with the supernatural, and more importantly, a dive into the uncanny. I want to explore that last element a bit more. The Blight is actually out in the open, disguising itself as another player, or players I should say. It really makes the spy's line and meet the spy mean a lot more. In both Pyrocynical and Willie St. Willie's coverage of the series, they made the comparison to The Thing, which funny enough is a movie two idiot Germans have not seen. Their comparison isn't wrong though, as the two involve an unsuspected person transforming into body horror. That brings up another point. With Skinwalker becoming an everyday term, as well as more modern horror projects involving mimics of some kind, I think we're starting to see this trope become a bit more oversaturated. You can also say the same thing about video game entities. However, by combining the two, we see an approach to both tropes in a unique way. In turn, ServerBlight manages to feel refreshing. Out of all the monsters I've talked about, the ServerBlight is probably the most terrifying. We already know of its abilities to blend in, trap players in the game, and suck in their souls, as well as their ever-expanding knowledge and sadistic behaviors. To add on to that, the ServerBlight's amalgamate appearance is already nauseating enough, but when we skip forward to Proxy, we see the Blight take the form of eyes just staring you down. Whether it's the soul of the player it took, or the Blight's true form, the effect still curdles within you. It's also unfortunate enough for people who survived its clutches. They can't enjoy the game anymore without being at risk, nor are they able to tell the tale. Nobody's going to believe that there's an eldritch monstrosity in TF2 that sucks in souls, so now those players just have to live with that anguish alone. As much as I emphasized how big and scary of a threat the Blight is, that doesn't mean people can't be saved. Potentially, the Blight could even be stopped. Continuing onward from the story, the Blight continues to pursue both new players while also torturing the ones it has in its binds. Yeah, Aaron's story still isn't over. It's become his destiny to save as many people as possible from the Blight. He even reunites with Red Dolphin at a certain point to push this endeavor, though that doesn't exactly go to plan. At times, you can see the Blight take damage, be outsmarted, and even act out of blind rage. May be intelligent, but it's also emotional. Plus, there are ways to avoid the Blight, such as self-destructing or ending a match. In the entry Doubt, both Aaron and the Blight have a much more established relationship. It kind of reminds me of the Batman and Joker's rivalry. Don't see it? Well, in the video, the Blight returns the consciousness of a player for the sake of messing with Aaron, then leaves without doing anything to him. The Blight knows that there's not a lot he can do to stop Aaron, so he'll just torment him in another way. To bring him back to Batman and Joker, we have a hero whose trauma led to their determination to end the malice that affected the people they care about, and a force that's spreading their chaos while also trying to break the other. I thought I'd be done here, but no. As of writing the script, two idiot Germans released a new part titled Conviction. This new part completely changed everything. We have Aaron come across the Blight once again, this time with the merc surrounding it in prayer. One of the players trapped in the Blight is named Savior. He's fully conscious and is preaching that the Blight has brought him enlightenment. He even knows Aaron's name, as Matt is continuously crying his name. He does try to get Aaron to join him, but of course, his attempt was futile. On one hand, we have a prophet preaching from the sky that the being torturing him is his god, while the true savior of this story jumps into the depths to escape and save more lives. It doesn't get more poetic than that. Also, this series is an ARG now. Huh, Aaron looks kinda familiar. Oh wow, a new cosmetic. It kind of reminds me of today's sponsor, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep is a company that designs sleeping masks made to ensure you get the rest you need. Whether it's for those nights after a long day, or a nap on a lazy afternoon, they are adjustable for personalized fit, made from soft, breathable, durable materials, and have zero pressure on your eyelids or on your eyelashes. Best of all, you can get 10% off when you go to the link in the description and use code MyCasey. As both a content creator and a full-time college student, all-nighters are a constant, and before then, sleep was something I struggled with, but thanks to Manta Sleep, the days of counting sheep and warm milk are a thing of the past. In about a month from now, I will be traveling to my hometown for the Halloween season. Now I know, I'm about to have the best plane nap ever. Again, just click the link in the description and use code MyCasey for 10% off. Thanks to Manta Sleep for making this video possible.
Man, I don't even play this stupid fucking game anymore. We'll be back with more TF2 horror.
The last entry I'll talk about today has been referred to as Emesis Blue but for Red Team. Once you take a look, you'll understand why. On April 30th of 2025, YouTuber Daft Spunky uploaded a video titled SFM Horror, Don't Join Team Red. The video sets itself up as a recruitment ad to join the Red Team, then it immediately shifts to a PSA from the future, forewarning of the never-ending fighting and respawning they'll have to endure. This idea put a mental toll on our mercs, particularly with the medic. We learned that the engineer took 20 years to build a time machine to send this message. The video ends with a message begging not to sign the contract. Part 2 also continues with an advert, focusing on the blue team before it shifts to a message saying, Redmond is your enemy, referencing the classic Adult Swim bumper. It seems the time machine didn't work as intended. After the previous broadcast, both the soldier and the scout have transformed into these deformed monsters. Redmond is your enemy. The video ends with, pay attention to the letters in Redmond. With part 3, it's been clear that the broadcasts are a secret from the other mercs. We also continue to learn more about the monsters. More and more have been made. Worst of all, they charge at the main red team, and as more of them die, the more they begin to mutate. It's unfortunate because the red team has no other choice but to fight back. Engineer has set up sentries to protect them, but they're able to kill red team mercs as well. This backfires as the spy, who had to collect some intel, gets caught in the crosshairs. Spy can respawn, but it was probably ideal that he didn't. Demo Man isn't responding to the situation lightly. His paranoia gets to a point where he's refusing treatment, though his paranoia serves him right, as the medic who was with him was a clone the whole time. After the clone is killed, the engineer talks about how he can no longer trust his comrades. Part 4 has two plot lines, one that focuses on blue team planning an invasion on red team's territories, and the red team dealing with more clones. Engineer goes through the intel Spy gathered and comes to the theory that Redmond has been trying to produce more clones, but because of his incompetence, they end up messing up. Towards the end of this video, the red team tries to call on the blue team for help in two ways, one by shooting a flare at a plane, and another by signaling a message to them. Luckily enough, the blue engineer picked it up. Also, our actual red medic is there and alive. With the flare, I should mention that the blue team took it as an invite to invade the red base. As the video finishes up, it's revealed that Redmond has sold his soul to dark arts in order to gain victory in the gravel war. The clones are a consequence of this action. In part 5, the blue team ambushes the red base, only to be met with clones. The red team has yet another battle with the clones, but they're eventually saved by the blue team who made it through. The two teams decide to put their rivalry aside and team up against this new big bad. I won't dive too deep into parts 6 and 7 as they're much more dialogue heavy, but to briefly explain, a spy had revived and had to solid snake his way around these clones. that are a lot creepier than the ones you've seen before. Soldier made it out, has sacrificed himself so that Spy can escape. The clones are a problem on other bases, and our main mutated scout has retained much of his former self. The machines have also become involved in the conflict, and seeing them fight the clones has got to be the coolest shit ever. Even though I called this series Emesis Blue but for Red Team, I don't think it's fair to compare it to the other entries in this video. It's a lot simpler with its slideshow-based visuals, rather than relying on cinematics and voice acting. Though I must admit, the action sequences are pretty fun. There were scenes that were unsettling, and the clones were absolutely terrifying. Them being called ghouls or demons throughout only adds to that fact. They're grotesque. They're smart enough to make strategies, and there are just so many of them that the mercs have to sleep with one eye open. Despite what I just said, I don't think this series is meant to scare you. From what we've seen, the clones aren't unstoppable. While the earlier entries could be compared to traditional horror movies that focus on a big bad, Don't Join Team Red is more comparable to zombie apocalypse works. The focus isn't just on the monsters, but on our characters. The Red Engineer is the series' narrator. We explore his thoughts, as well as his desperate methods of dealing with clones. In one case, we see him lose his trust with his comrades, and in another, we see him value his relationship with them. Moving on to the other mercs, we see them lift each other up in a state of crisis. We also see Pyro grieving his brethren, Spy and Sniper remembering their families, the teams coming to terms with being clones themselves and picking apart their lost memories, and the two colored teams willing to drop their conflict to focus on what truly matters. Needless to say, the other entries had their fair share of characterization, but with Don't Join Team Red, it's as wholesome and hopeful as it is dreadful and appalling. Even outside of our mercs, the Mann brothers, as well as the Administrator and Miss Pauling, serve a crucial role to the story. They show that there's a very fine line between what's ethical and what's good for business. I think this series perfectly serves as a different approach to TF2 horror.
Enter if you dare. You're in for a scare.
There's probably a bunch of TF2 horror animations I didn't cover, as well as games and creepypastas. Plus, there's Interloper and Badwater Pro, to which I don't fully consider them TF2 horror series because TF2 elements only make up a small part of them. Yet, the main point of the video still stands. Let's go back to the questions from the beginning. Why make horror out of Team Fortress 2? If you're familiar with my channel, you'd know that as fandoms grow, creative fans would want to run wild with their imaginations, sometimes portraying their favorite characters in horrifying scenarios. After all, horror is about taking a familiar world and twisting it to elicit our primal instincts of fear. Yet, as the genre grows and becomes more prevalent, especially on the internet, not everything succeeds. Fortunately, for Team Fortress 2, the horror doesn't feel out of place. As unserious as both the game and its fandom are, TF2 has many elements that make it perfect for horror. If anything, the unseriousness could add to the horror. We've seen it be used for bait and switch technique. We've also seen by distorting the characters' appearances, which is used for comedic effect in old school TF2 animations, can actually be portrayed as body horror. Moving on to the more serious stuff, the mercenaries in Team Fortress 2 are, well, mercenaries, expendable company property. They are paid to kill, otherwise they'd be killed. We've seen them explode, be set on fire, and even die to fish. It doesn't really faze us when we see the mercs die. TF2 horror takes a different approach to their deaths. Rather than be killed for survival or monetary gain, we see them get killed for vengeance and enjoyment. They'll go through the most gruesome deaths. Other times they're tortured for eternity. It's about dealing with humanity. That also includes respawning and cloning. In most games, both are there for the sake of gameplay and are not considered canon at all. When both cloning and respawning are actual in-universe concepts, then both philosophical and ethical questions come into play. For Team Fortress 2, both are canon, but it's never really explained. With TF2 horror, the concepts aim for a more psychological and darker approach. TF2 horror projects also deal in the uncanny, creating fear in the familiar. The maps we played so many rounds in are now homes of the horrors we witnessed. When the maps are no longer filled with people, it creates a haunting feeling. The antagonists in each of these series look terrifying, but closely resemble the mercenaries we've grown attached to. Out of everyone who's seen these TF2 horror series, there's probably a chunk of people who don't see the game in the same light anymore. More importantly, creators of these TF2 horror projects implement elements that really bring out the horror. Already, all of these projects are well animated and have great sound design. Cinematic shots can lead to build-up or exaggerate the emotions the characters feel. More importantly, the goofiness of all these monsters is challenged by their mystique. We don't know their full capabilities, nor do we know what their intentions are. Half the time, their appearances aren't even shown. Even so, the more we learn about these monsters, the more questions we ask. I notice with works such as creepypastas, analog horror, and mascot horror, there seems to be a clone problem. A creator sees one project do extremely well, so they try to copy it to achieve the same success. With these TF2 horror projects, some inspired others, and a lot of them follow similar concepts, yet they all differ drastically. All of these differ in themes, monsters, and approach. Some are in-universe, others take place in the real world. Just from watching 5 seconds of each, their vibes are completely different. Suffice to say, My praises don't wash away the flaws of these animations. Sometimes the acting felt awkward, there were scenes where I felt like the animations needed work, and the goofiness of some scenes took away the immersion for me. Nonetheless, to repeat what I said earlier, Team Fortress 2 fans are on another fucking level. Here's a tier list on which TF2 horror antagonist gives the meanest backshots. My relationship with Team Fortress 2 is strange. Growing up, I was never allowed to download anything on the family computer. Steam is a virus apparently. Truth be told, most of my exposure to the game has mainly been through SFM animations, both official and fan-made. During school, me and my friends would quote lines from Meet the Team, while also saying random shit like putis and penis. I did end up owning my own laptop, and when a certain virus hit, I played the fuck out of TF2. I accumulated over 200 hours, which to you sweats is probably rookie numbers. Every so often, I make a 3x3 of my favorite video games, and each time, TF2 has managed to take a spot. The game may not be perfect, but this is a game with really wacky gameplay and a passionate fan base. When I saw Emesis Blue, I was pretty mind blown, but I didn't think too much of it afterwards. As my YouTube career started to kick off from that Smash Bros video I did back in December, I was getting comments to cover both Anomalies and Emesis Blue. I ended up discovering ServerBlight on my own too. Thanks to these two YouTubers, I discovered Don't Join Team Red and HoovyDundy. So here we are now. I love all of these series greatly, and the fact that I'm able to finish this video after putting it off for so long just feels satisfying. I didn't want to make an analysis video on a certain series because that'd take way too long, but also there's so many out there. Instead, I wanted to talk about why I love these series so much and why they're so good, to try to persuade you guys to check out these series for yourselves, or to love them even more than you already do. Take care of yourselves, and of course, as usual, please have yourselves a damn good one.